Hello, hockey fans, and welcome back to another episode of High Flying, the podcast made for the fans.
By the fans.
As always, my name is Nolan, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host Jude.
What's up, everybody? Just gonna throw this off here.
And while Jude's making his adjustments, I guess I'll introduce today's episode. There's a few dates that you mark down on the calendar of every sporting season that some action will be coming around. I think of July 1st, free agent frenzy in the National Hockey League. Well, this week we have another one of those key dates on the sporting calendar. Yes, it is the opening weekend of the Formula One season in 2026 in Australia.
Woo-hoo.
And Jude does not care, and we're just going to skip ahead. It's actually trade deadline as well in the National Hockey League, so we got a lot of trades to discuss. Hopefully, I psyched some of y'all out. I know Mike will be very disappointed that we're not going to be discussing Formula One today, but we got too much hockey going on. How do you want to do this, Jude? Any trades stand out to you? Do you want to start off with Canucks? Do you want to do Canucks? Maybe we do Canucks midway to break it up.
Sure.
I feel. What do you want to do? What do you want to start with?
Why don't we start with
We can go in order.
Yeah, I was thinking we could either like go in order of when they happen over the last week, or we could do like biggest to smallest. I don't know.
I'll just start because I wrote down the standings, and I think we can go in order. And I think this really kicks off with a pair of trades for defensemen, and it kicks off back last month in February. We didn't really talk about it, but Samuel Girard went to Pittsburgh. Brett Kulak goes to Pittsburgh.
Nope.
What are we doing here? Samuel Girard to Pittsburgh, Brett Kulak to Colorado. There we go. That's why you write stuff down. And so for me, that's kind of an even Stevens kind of trade. And then we get into Connor Murphy going to Edmonton from Chicago. And as much as I don't think Edmonton's doing anything this year, I do feel like Connor Murphy's a welcome addition to a very thin Edmonton blue line. So maybe we can start with the Oilers.
Sure. Yeah, good call. I'm a fan of both. Not to look ahead, but both of the moves that they made at the deadline.
Well, we can talk about that as well because it was also with Chicago. If you want to talk about the other one too.
Yeah. All right, sure. Wrap her all in. I mean, second round pick for Connor Murphy. I feel like a team such as Edmonton, they're kind of definitely going to welcome his presence there. Connor Murphy, big body, right-handed, might be able to shore up a pair with Darnell Nurse, who's had a rather underwhelming season to the shock of not many people, I guess. Sorry, Darnell Nurse.
I feel like Darnell Nurse is, no offense to the guy, but he's had a rather underwhelming career.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys where like if he made 6 million or like 5.5 million, he'd get a lot less flack from fans and media, but
sure.
such is the case. He makes 9.25. But yeah, anyways, I think Connor Murphy will help solidify the defense there a little bit. And they were pretty big fans of trading with Chicago this deadline.
Yeah, I think too, like Colton Dock, Jason Dickinson, they add a little bit of depth. Is it the kind of depth scoring that Connor McDavid would like? Probably not. But come playoff time, as we all know and as hockey fans know, you generally have to dip a little bit deeper into the depth pool with injuries. You're playing some hard-hitting hockey, and as much as Edmonton's right on the bubble of the playoffs as we speak, I think we all kind of expect Edmonton to still make it in what is a weaker Pacific Division. They also kind of they don't have strong goaltending, but Jari and Ingram are performing a little bit stronger than Skinner and Pickard were. So I think the fact that they're making these depth additions, I think Connor Murphy's going to help. I think this is a win-win for both teams. Chicago's unloading some cap and going into an offseason where they're prepared to sign some free agents, and Edmonton acquires some key pieces that could come to play in the long run in the playoffs. So to me, this win-win for both teams here.
I agree. It always shocks me come deadline time how the prices just get ratcheted up so much for these guys where like if at the start of the season Edmonton traded a first round pick for Jason Dickinson, everybody would just be losing their minds. Like, is Jason Dickinson really worth a first round pick? Probably not, but
I
at the
think I
deadline,
think probably the potential of Colton Dock is probably what constitutes more of the pick than Jason Dickinson.
fair enough, fair enough. I don't disagree with that, but yeah, just overall, the prices for some of these guys. I mean, this is jumping around a little bit, but the Toronto Maple Leafs getting a first round pick for a guy that has 5 goals on the season is absolutely mind blowing to me, Nicolas Waugh. But it just goes to show those teams that are right at the top and think they've got what it takes to win. You're willing to mortgage the future a little bit more than maybe a few months ago they would have been. Not that Nicolas Waugh is a bad player. Obviously, he brings size, again, depth to a Colorado team. He's a big body, but I know it's going to be at the end of the first round most likely, but you never know. Like you lose in the first round, all right, you just gave up a first round pick for a guy with 5 tucks.
Yeah, so personally, I really like this trade, actually. I think this is probably going to be a little bit of a weaker draft class. Colorado's clearly in win now mode. They're going to get hit with the President's Trophy curse most likely, so they're probably not going to win now just based off of that. But I think this is likely the strongest Avalanche roster we've seen in the Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon era, including when they won a cup. And like you said, Nicolas Waugh brings a lot of experience. I believe he was on the Vegas Cup team. I could be wrong.
Yeah, yeah, he
But
had he had 11 points in their playoff run actually, so not unsubstantial.
yeah, so anytime you add cup experience to a team, that's never going to hurt you. It's not going to be a massive first round pick. Like right now, they're lined up to play. I have it in my notes. Right now, they're lined up to play Seattle in the first round. Obviously, the last time these two teams met, I believe it was Seattle that actually may have got the better of them. I can't remember who won that series, but it was probably a lot closer than it should have been.
Yeah, Seattle won that series and then lost to Dallas in the next round.
Yeah, so there we go. So a little bit of a rematch. I really like this trade. And the thing I like about it too, from the Toronto perspective as well, is they're finally decided now's the time to commit to a rebuild. They also moved Scott Lawton out. They moved Bobby McMahon out. So they're stocking up picks. They're finally rebuilding. They understand it's not working. Um, could they have done this a lot sooner and avoided a lot of growing pains? Sure. I believe Nicola Waugh was part of that Mitch Marner trade. Does that make the Mitch Marner trade look as good now that you've just moved away from him? Probably not. I would have liked to see Toronto rebuild sooner, but at least it seems like they're starting to put the pieces in motion now.
I agree. There's no point in letting mistakes compound. Should they have done it earlier? Yes, but I understand in a market like that, when you do have superstars, it's tough to finally pull the plug. That being said, they still have all their big pieces. They didn't really move off anybody major, but you know what? They brought in a first, they brought in a second, and they brought in a third round pick, which for a team that's not making the playoffs, it's a good sign for them. I think the worst move that Tree Living made was not moving Marner right when he became GM before his no trade clause kicked in. There was enough proof before that it wasn't going to work, and the word is that Shanahan was kind of completely against that. It's kind of why Dubas got fired and moved on because he was finally ready to break up those 4 guys. But yeah, looking back, pretty egregious mistake not getting on this sooner.
Yeah, I agree. And 9 times out of 10, that's kind of there's two types of regret in hockey. Either you move off a guy and then he turns into an absolute stud somewhere else, and you end up in a Mikko Rantanen situation, or you wait too long, should have done it sooner, don't get the huge return. Speaking of teams that are in that playoff fight with Seattle, currently holding down the top wild card spot. Utah made a big trade, and it was funny because looking back when they were still in Arizona, you look at all the trades that they made, and a lot of them were to take on these big contracts for just for cap purposes. I believe Shea Weber was in Arizona at one point, or at least his contract was. Pavel Datsyuk was in Arizona for a little bit.
Yep.
And it paid off because they were able to stockpile picks and they sent 3 of this year's second round. They're not even different years second round picks. They send 2026 second round picks to Calgary for a defenseman that was highly coveted. I actually didn't think he'd be necessarily that much on the market, but it makes sense. Calgary's not making the playoffs. They've already moved off of Anderson. Mackenzie Weegar is pretty close to as an elite tier of a defenseman that you're going to get in a deadline market. We both had conversations about him potentially making Canada's Olympic team. Maybe Utah could have given up a first potentially and saved some of the picks, but I actually kind of like the route they went with giving up 3 seconds opposed to a first. I think it protects them just in case they don't make the playoffs, and that turns into a lottery pick. Um, so I think this is huge for Utah, and it can definitely help them in the immediate future with the position they're in right now in the first wild card spot. I also think the strategy of the multiple picks is going to serve them very well in the long run.
Yeah, pretty much a win-win for both sides, I think. If you're Calgary, like you said, getting 3 picks in the same draft in the top 2 rounds at once is pretty awesome for if you're going to move out a guy like Uyghur. They also moved off Rasmus Anderson earlier, so they've been bringing in some pretty nice future capital there for the Flames. Mackenzie Weegar having a bit of a down year by his standards. Don't look at the plus minus too much this year, but everybody knows he's a stellar defenseman. Right-handed, he can play the left side if you need. And looking at Utah's depth chart now, having a first pair of Sergachev and Uyghur, if that's the route they choose to go, that's that's a pretty solid first pair if they make the playoffs. I mean, what an addition for them. But yeah,
Yeah, and they still have good defensive depth. Like, I like John Marino. I like Sean Dursey. They have a lot of pieces.
Canucks
But
love
obviously, I will say Marino and Dursey, they're not top line guys. They're not top pair defensemen. They're not elite, but they're good serviceable depth for if you get yourself into playoff situations. Now, we do have some breaking news. You have not heard it here first because we do not put these out live. But producer Ethan, first of all, I just want to give us a huge shout out that I've learned that there's only 3 reliable sources when it comes to National Hockey League analytics. It's either Elliot Friedman, our producer Ethan, or friend of the show Gage Gammon. And those are because Gage literally just texted me at the same time Ethan showed us on the screen. So big shout out to those 3 guys, Ethan, Gage, and Elliot, for being the only 3 reliable sources in hockey. Nazem Kadri to the Colorado Avalanche. Without knowing the return, what do you make of that?
huge addition for the Avalanche. I mean, even before this, you were just saying this is their strongest team, definitely since their cup run in 22, I believe it was. I mean, they're heavy favorites. If they weren't already, I think that just solidifies Colorado. I mean, they what a deadline for them, bringing in Waugh, Kadri, Kulak on the back end. That is a strong team right there. I would be shaking in my boots if I was the Minnesota Wild, potentially having to play them in the first round.
The only thing that slightly scares me a little bit with this is on paper, like I think, yeah, like I think this is stronger than their cup team in 22 on paper. This is giving me a little bit of Boston President's Trophy flashbacks when they lost in the first round to Florida.
But
Now, I'm not saying Colorado's going to lose in the first round. I think this is actually a stronger team than that Boston team on paper. Makes me a little nervous for them. But yeah, I agree. It's huge. I don't know what the return is. I assume they've given up picks and prospects. I hope they didn't give up any actual serviceable pieces because they need that depth. But right now on paper, Colorado clearly looks like the strongest team in the National Hockey League. Um, I'm very curious to see the return. It's got to be at least a first, I'm thinking for sure.
I can't imagine they gave up anything off the current roster. Wouldn't make much sense for Calgary to want that, firstly, and for them to want to give that up when you're all in. The chips are fully in the middle of the table for the Colorado Avalanche. So what a deadline for Calgary. I mean, Mr. Conroy, holy.
Yeah, that's great job, first of all, for Calgary from a rebuilding standpoint. Um, we'll get to the Canucks in a little bit, but we can learn something. I say we, but you can learn something or other from Calgary. Great job by Colorado. You know what? I've looking at all these trades, and some trades, sometimes you get a trade and you look at that and you go like, what the fuck is going on? Right? Like, why on earth? There's not really any of those. I think the one thing I'll say about this deadline, I think all the GMs that have been involved have done a really good job. They seem all to me like win-win scenarios for the most part.
I'm not seeing anybody who's gotten massively fleeced so far, at least in the immediate returns, doesn't seem that way. So
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you. Nothing this deadline has really shocked me to the core, other than actually,
There's one trade I have in mind, but you go.
I'm curious to see if this is the same trade, but John Carlson getting moved out of Washington.
That's the one I don't understand. Exact same trade because Washington, yes, you're outside of a playoff spot, but only by 4 points, right? And you're also entering what is very likely the last season or the second last season of the Alex Ovechkin era. You have Logan Thompson putting up some of the best numbers of his career. Jacob Chikrin looks like an absolute stud. You still have a chance to make the playoffs. I don't understand why you move off of your top defenseman. That doesn't make sense to me.
So last night I was talking to friend of the show, Gavin Mott, and other friend of the show who hasn't been on the show yet, Kale Kasdorf, about this trade. And Kale was a little bit baffled as well. And just trying to think of it from Washington's perspective, yes, it might be Ovechkin's last season, but as you said, they're 4 points out of a playoff spot. And even if they do sneak into the playoffs, I think realistically, everybody can look at that team and go, are they a legitimate contender? Probably not. So moving off a pending UFA in Carlson, who's 36, maybe they just didn't want to pay the ticket when it came around. Production's likely going to decline within the next couple of years. So getting a first round pick, never going to hurt. They also brought in Timothy Liljegren from the Sharks, who obviously isn't the same caliber of player as John Carlson, but I think maybe it's a little bit of a okay, taking stock, do we really have a chance at it this year? Probably not. So get what we can for a guy we weren't going to re-sign anyways, but definitely came out of nowhere.
So I kind of disagree with that, and I'll tell you why I disagree. What was the return? The return, okay, so you get a conditional first. You know, the conditional first is good, especially if it turns into next year. Good return. You can re-sign him for cheaper next year. But my thing is it's he's got 46 points in 55 games, I believe it was. So he's still one of your highest point producing offensive players as defenseman, which is huge. He can still skate very well, still very good with his stick defensively at some point, but we've seen it time and time again where these older players we expect them to decline, and some of them, the Joe Pavelski's, an example from you, still produce longevity in their career. I think that at some point, this at the end of the day, sports are a business, and yes, if you make the playoffs, is Washington winning the Stanley Cup? Maybe not, but the East is so volatile right now. Washington can still has a chance. I see them to go on a legitimate run, right? Like maybe you prefer not to run into Carolina, but really any other team I'd say you have a chance against. Are you going to be favorites against? No. But and to me, I look at it if you get into the playoffs, you sell more tickets, more merch, more TV deals, more advertising, you make more money from an ownership perspective. I would not want to move off John Carlson.
I hear where you're coming from. I don't fully disagree. I just think looking at it, I mean, I saw Washington live this year. It honestly comes down to their roster just underperforming this year because
Yeah.
you look at
Tom
them on
Wilson,
paper.
also, I just want to say Tom Wilson having the best season of his career. Go ahead.
This is true. But looking at them on paper, you would expect this team to be near the top of the conference, or at least I did at the start of the year with their goaltending and overall situation. So, given how they've performed to this point this year, being currently outside of a playoff spot, you're right. The East is changing every day with where teams fall. But I think they must have been in contact with Carlson and his agent throughout the season and just come to a point where it's like, look, we're not going to re-sign this guy. We don't really think we have the horses to go get another ring this year. So move off him now, get a first for it instead of losing him for nothing and probably not winning the cup either way. But I agree, it was rather shocking. I'm sure Carlson wasn't expecting this either.
And you know what? I this is probably a really bad example because this is a very isolated incident, but I think there's something to be said for just get into the playoffs and then you give yourself a chance, right? Like just 16 teams make it. If you're one of those 16, like you got a chance. And I think back to really bad example because once again, this is an isolated incident. The Edmonton Oilers coming into the playoffs in 2006. as an 8 seed. Detroit was an absolute wagon. The Oilers dismantled them. They take it all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Ultimately lost. But this is a team, arguably the weakest team structurally on paper in 2006, that made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, was one game short of winning it, and took out arguably the best team on paper that season in 2006. And once again, I know it's not a good example because it's a very isolated incident that doesn't happen all the time, but I think there's something to be said. If you get into the playoffs, you give yourself a chance to win, which leads me to a team. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I was going to
Well,
transition to another team. Go ahead.
just to back you up a little bit here, I guess I'm hurting my own case, but the Los Angeles Kings, I can't remember if it was the 2012 or 2014 season, but they went into the playoffs as an 8 seed, came back down 0-3 to the Sharks in the first round, absolute pain to teenage Jude, and went on to win the cup. So it
Right,
can happen.
2014.
Yeah,
2014. Yep.
it can happen. Absolutely. You're not wrong. I just really it comes down to, I guess, management in Washington and ownership just do not have a firm belief that this is the team to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, that is the only trade I don't like. Speaking of Los Angeles, they're in a really weird situation because they're currently outside of the playoffs looking in with an aging core. So they move off of Warren Fogle, they move off of Corey Perry. The one thing I will mention is I don't know what the contracts are on these players. But then they pick up Scott Laughton. To me, it was a little weird to move off of guys as if you're not going to make the playoffs and get some picks and free up some cap, and then bring in a player like Scott Laughton, who's probably a third or fourth line center depth guy. To me, that move doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then again, it's Ken Holland. A lot of what he does doesn't make sense.
Yeah, all season LA, they're in a tough place. As you said, aging core. It's Kopitar's last year. They're kind of in that point where, are you really good enough to make a run? Kind of like Washington? No, but they're also not ready to tear it down. So from their perspective, moving off of Corey Perry and Warren Fogle, they got 2 second-round picks for that. And then if they make the playoffs, the pick for Scott Laughton, they're trading out a second-round pick. So yeah, it's kind of they kind of made a bunch of moves to not really get better or worse. So talking about it, yeah, I kind of agree with you. They're just in a weird spot. I don't know if they really have a direction right now, which is never a place you want to be in.
Yeah, but you know what? This is the same GM that signed Cody Ceci to one of the worst contracts I've ever seen. So, you know what? You're a Canucks fan. You must be happy to see LA sitting in the middle of no man's land right now. They're in the ocean without a life preserver right now, LA. So we'll see what happens, but it's not looking good.
I'll be real. I think I'm as a Canucks fan, we're in a place where it doesn't really matter what the rest of the league does for the next 2, 3, hopefully not 4, but maybe 4 years. We're gonna be near the bottom anyways, so I don't really care who's good in our division right now because it's not gonna be us. So looking at it, I mean, yeah, I'm not rooting for any of the other Pacific teams to do particularly well, but does it really affect me whether or not teams are pushing or not? Not particularly.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe that's the perfect time to get into it because I feel like our teams are in a similar boat where we both kind of both our teams have resigned ourselves to not making the playoffs, and we're both entering rebuilds. Maybe my team is doing it a little bit softer than you guys. So who do you want to get to first? You're probably more exciting, but I can start with Winnipeg. Save the more exciting stuff for a little bit later in the show.
Sure, go for it. Let's do Winnipeg.
Yeah, so move off of Logan Stanley and Luke Shen, move him off to Buffalo. I have always said, and you've heard me say this on the show before, you've heard me say this off the show, I have never liked Winnipeg's defense. I hate the defensive core we have. I don't understand it. I don't understand why Dylan DeMello's there. He's terrible. Up until this year, I didn't really like Dylan Sandberg that much, but he's actually having a decent year. Luke Shen is slow as fuck. I didn't understand why he was there. I didn't understand why we weren't playing Hayden Fleury more. Really weird roster management on the back end. I know Shovel Dayoff is really like this decor. I'm excited to see it finally blown up a bit. I was a little bit sad to see Logan Stanley go. He's kind of coming to his own for me. He was really slow when he first came into the league, and I believe he started his career with Winnipeg. He made his debut in the playoffs, which is never a fun time to just be thrown into the playoffs. He's having a career season, I believe. Look at that, 9 goals. I believe his career high before this in a season was one. So he's got 9 times the goal production this year. Obviously, from a return standpoint, move him when he's playing the best hockey of his career, especially if we're not winning now. I went to go see Winnipeg actually in Vancouver on the 25th, right after the Olympic break. Pionk and Morrissey were both hurt, so that probably didn't help the decor. But we also have no like D prospects either. Like Heinola looks slow as fuck. He's terrible. Um, we have like Salomon Lawson or whatever his name is, some Salamanson dude, number 57. If somebody can tell me who 57 on Winnipeg is, never heard of the guy, and they're my favorite team. He's not good. He looked terrible. So we basically have an AHL decor at this point because we just moved off of Sandberg or not Sandberg. We just moved off of Stanley and Shen and Pionk and Morrissey are injured. So we basically just have Dylan Sandberg right now. And Dylan DeMello is an absolute travesty, and everyone else is an AHL defenseman. This guy, Elias Salomonson. This guy, he's terrible at hockey. Don't like him. Um, Maybe my tune will change after some development, but
All right, shots fired at Elias Salamonson getting strays here, but
no, he's terrible. We talked about the league being too watered down and it turning into a bit of a developmental league. The Winnipeg Jets decor is the perfect example of that. We also move off of Tanner Pearson, which I'm very thankful for. He also went, Buffalo really likes another, Buffalo likes trading with Winnipeg. This is another team or another two teams that we see that are enjoying each other's company right now. And you know what? I don't understand this trade from a Buffalo perspective. The defense one, yes. Why the fuck would you want Tanner Pearson, dude? Once again, said it all season. We're so slow up front. Gustav Nyquist has done nothing. I think Gustav Nyquist has like 2, 3 goals all year. Jonathan Taves looks so slow. I understand why he's there. He's good for leadership. That's awesome. Cole Perfetti's had a down year. Kepka's really done nothing. Pearson might have the most goals of all of them. I haven't really looked at the stats, but watching Tanner Pearson in Vancouver, the guy can barely skate. It looks like he's using a fucking walker, you know? I really don't understand that addition from a Buffalo perspective. Maybe it's because of his time in LA that he does have um, the experience playing on an elite level team and going deep into playoff runs. But my take on it is we need to get younger and we need to get faster, and it seems like we're trying to do that this season. Unfortunately, it's also going to be a very painful time to watch Winnipeg hockey. And we have Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck having some of the most peak elite seasons of their careers. And we're just going to waste it all. So yeah, I'm pretty depressed with the state of the franchise right now, and I blame Kevin Cheveldayoff for not doing something sooner because we used to have the best decor in the league. It used to be Bufflin and Trouba and Enstrom and Morrissey. You had Kulikov there. You had Tyler Myers as a sixth defenseman. That's where Tyler Myers should be, a sixth defenseman. Nothing more than a sixth defenseman. That was a great decor, and it just went downhill from there. That's the end of my rant.
shockingly, I actually like the spot Vancouver's in quite a bit more than the spot that Winnipeg's in because, like LA, they're a little bit caught in between. As you said, they've got those absolute studs in Scheifele and Connor and Presidential Medal of Freedom winner Connor Hellebuck on the roster. And a couple of summers ago, when they all signed their extension, or when Scheifele and Hellebuck signed their extensions, kind of shockingly, everybody thought they were gone. It looked like, oh, great, Winnipeg's gonna, push forward with this core and see what happens. What's happened since then? I mean, last year was great for them, but now, as you're saying, they're in a spot where they were a complete one-line team with Velarde and on the line with Connor and Scheifele, and going forward, I don't really think it makes a whole lot of sense if you're going to be trading off what little depth you did have to go for futures. Looking at the trade for Shen and Stanley, I do like it. They got a fourth, a second, and Isaac Rosen. He's a '03 born kid. He's got great numbers in the AHL this year, over a point a game. So you like to see that. He was a 14th overall pick a couple seasons ago. So basically a fourth, a second, and a first. Can't be too mad at that for a couple of depth defensemen. But yeah, you're in a bit of a tough spot. do you want them to kind of do the soft rebuild, the quick retool and maximize these guys, or do you think it's just full blown, let's move off all the big contracts and kind of speed run a little bit the rebuild?
So here's my struggle. And if it was the majority of teams in the league, I would say just do a soft retool, especially with the cap going up for the next 2 seasons. Um, and the strength of the upcoming free agent class. The problem is Winnipeg historically has a very hard time signing free agents because nobody wants to play in Canada because they get taxed ridiculous amounts compared to the Sun Belt teams. And who wants to live in Winnipeg, right? Like that's just a fact. It's one of the least desirable places to live geographically in the league. Combine that with a lack of success this season, I can't imagine many free agents wanting to go to Winnipeg. So I think you do have to move off of guys when they're at the peak of their career. I don't want this to turn into a situation where we wait too long. I think Nikolai Ehlers hurt us for sure, him leaving to Carolina. I don't think it should have hurt us to go from a President's Trophy winner to a bottom feeder team. Like if we were competing for a wild card right now, that's one thing. We're not even close. We're not even close, you know? And I think too is Winnipeg, you have to be really good at developing if you're Winnipeg, because that's where you're going to acquire most of your assets is through drafting and development, because once again, nobody wants to play here. Um, we've done a really bad job at that, I think. Um, what's his name? Like Rucker
McGordy?
Moriarty or whatever his name is. He didn't want to play here. We moved him to Pittsburgh. We got Jaeger for that. He is looking very behind on his developmental curve right now. Um, Chaz Lucius, unfortunate with him forced to retire at a very, very young age due to health problems. That's out of our control. We don't get to do that. Once again, I look at younger defensemen. Obviously, Hayden Fleury wasn't a prospect when he came here, but he was looking as one of our faster defensemen. Hardly got any playing time. Um, Heinola has been developed very poorly. He hasn't got a lot of playing time. That's probably why he doesn't look up to par right now. Vesalainen, I believe we've already moved off of him, but like we did a shit job with Vesalainen. We're not playing Brad Lambert for whatever reason, even though our team's abysmal and the old guys can't move their fucking feet. We're still not giving any minutes to Brad Lambert. So I think this is a really poor managed team, and I actually think one thing that it brings into question is the coaching. I know Scott Arniel is nominated for the Jack Adams. I think after Paul Maurice, our coaching went downhill. Having Dave Lowry as your head coach, I guess that's a little cool moment for one season. When the son is the captain, so that's kind of cool having a father-son duo coach player. Rick Bowness is a great coach. He's not a winner. I kind of look at him as like a Pete DeBoer. He's kind of a guy that'll get you there, but he's not a guy that you cross the finish line with. He's never won anything in his career. And then Scott Arniel, I just think is a really bad coach strategically. At this point, we're not winning games. We only have one line. Why would you not break up that line and have top players playing with younger guys on their wing to try and get that development, try to build chemistry with the younger guys? I don't understand why we're just hammering this down because it's not working. We're not winning anything. I think this starts at the top. I think you fire Scott. And to answer your question, I personally would do a full rebuild because I think a retool heavily evolves the free agent market, and Winnipeg might have the weakest pull out of any team in the league to attract free agents. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, you pretty much covered all the bases there. I'm personally, after being a Canucks fan for the last, I'll say, 15 years, or definitely since the Sedins left, soft retools don't work. They don't work. They're purposeless. They just keep you kind of right where you are. You might get back on track for a season or two, but inevitably, if you don't commit to a full rebuild with the way that the CBA is structured and the way the league works, if you don't tear it down and get those top end guys at the top of the draft, it's really, really hard to ever make a long term turnaround. So I'll agree with you, especially in Winnipeg. It needs to come from the draft. It needs to be organizationally done. You can't be relying on signing guys to big tickets. So I guess I kind of would be surprised if this summer they decide to try and move off one like those top end guys, Connor and Scheifele, but I
They're
think they
not going
should.
to because they need to sell tickets,
Yeah,
right?
you're
Like
right.
at the end of the day, Winnipeg has some of the worst attendance in the league, which I don't get, dude. Like this with the small stadium, you think it'd be easier to fill it up. But I think, maybe there was a reason they left for Phoenix in 96. And I'm not promoting hockey in Phoenix, don't get me wrong. I'd rather them, go to a Milwaukee or somewhere where it's actually cold and people actually care about hockey. But we've struggled with attendance, and I think if you move off of either of our gold medal winners or the biggest Olympic snub, that's going to be a problem if you're not winning.
Well, just quickly, I think since the NHL has returned from the Olympics, the biggest Olympic snub was Matthew Schaefer. Holy shit, dude, that guy should have been on the team. But anyways, that's a good point. The attendance is rough there, even with your top guys. So that's I hadn't really considered that, but that kind of puts you in even more of a bind because really the best thing for the team, I would imagine, is trading away those guys for massive hauls, and that puts you very much forward in terms of your rebuild as long as you get the picks right. But
And they're all
anyway,
on friendly contracts too, which boosts their value even more. So if I was the GM, I would move off of them, but that's
right,
just me.
right, yeah. End of the day,
Moving
you're
on.
fucked.
Yeah, no, I don't feel good about it at all because that's not what they're going to do. Because no one ever listens to me, but that's okay. To be fair, my specialty is goaltending, as I've stated many times. I'm surprised actually to see no goalies moved at this deadline. But speaking of another rebuilding team, I think Winnipeg's in a better position than Vancouver just because Vancouver always has a history of fucking it up. But this may be the first time in my life, all 26 years of me living, that Vancouver looks like they're doing a hard rebuild, which I think is exactly what they need. They made 5 trades, two of those trades a little bit bigger than the other three. What's your take on your local team and how they're doing this trade deadline?
Very happy to see them move off of some vets with term because for me, that's the thing. It's easy to move off the UFA guys. Those are kind of Irfan Gafar, shout out Nation Network. He made the analogy of the UFA guys trading them. That's like a free throw. That's easy. You got to do it. Trading the guys with term, the vets with term, that's more of a three-pointer. It can be, a little bit tougher to stomach for the management team, but as you said, for the first time in my entire life, it looks like they are actually committed to tearing this thing down. Now, that being said, could completely be undone if we see them on July 1st go and, sign some middling vets who are, good character guys to bad contracts with term. But can't give them shit for stuff they haven't done yet. So that being said, at this deadline was honestly shout out Tyler Myers, man. He did not have to waive his no trade clause. He could have just said, "Nope, I want to be here. My family likes it here. I'll finish my career out." He didn't do that. They were able to find him a spot that he wanted to go to. He still has family in Texas. And I was pretty happy with the return. A second round pick for Myers a couple of seasons ago, that would have been unfathomable. So shout out Tyler Myers. He at the end of the day, he was a good Canuck man. He put in his time, had his ups and downs on the ice, but off the ice, I mean, character guy. Was always really gracious with the media, and he was here through some rough times. So shout out to Tyler Myers. I do hope that he has a lot of success in Dallas and they go on a big run. So that was kind of the first one. We got a second, a fourth, I believe, for him. Pretty good. Stocking the draft cupboards, getting capital. The other big one, Connor Garland.
Can I just touch on Tyler Myers for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah,
I
go
just
for
want
it.
to say, great job for the Canucks to move him. I think you got to move as many pieces as possible. I was a little surprised to see Evander Kane not moved as well a little bit, but we'll talk about the guys who did. First thing I want to say, Logan Stanley has 9 times as many goals as Tyler Myers, so I just want to throw that out there. Good shout out to my boy Logan Stanley. The other thing, absolutely love the return. Tyler Myers, I've been very critical of him, and Dallas is obviously in win now mode. I think Tyler Myers works on Dallas as well because like you said, he's from Texas, first native Texan to play for the Dallas Stars. And they also have stronger depth on defense than the Canucks. So Tyler Myers is going to be in a bit more of a limited role. He's not going to be as exposed. Um, and so I think that's important, right? Like I think he's probably a better fit for Dallas than Vancouver, where he was playing a lot of top pair minutes before Roenick came along. So little sheltered minutes for Tyler Myers, acceptable. I just want to say I think it was a good trade. The second and the fourth, that was as good as well. Would I have done it if I was Dallas? No, but I'm a little bit biased against the guy. I think all in all, good trade for both teams.
Yeah, he's going to look a lot better on Dallas, as you're saying, sheltered minutes. Adam Foote has employed one of the worst defensive systems I've ever laid eyes on this year. That did not help anybody on this current roster. But we've
I
gone over Myers. So
I think Adam Foote might be the worst coach I've ever seen in NHL history, or at least in the era of me paying attention to NHL coaches. Like I've never seen somebody do a worse job. Thankfully, your guys' mission this year is to lose, but Adam Foote is the most brutal example of coaching I've ever seen, I think.
great assistant coach, not head coach material. I'll just say that. Do I ever think he's going to get another head coaching opportunity after this season? You never know, but unlikely. Complete unwillingness to move off of this god-awful defensive system that none of the players seem to understand or be able to execute. Just terrible. Anyways, moving along to the good stuff that happened for the Canucks. Connor Garland getting moved. That's a tough one. Connor Garland, man, I don't know if there's a guy with a bigger heart or better motor in the league than Connor Garland. To play the way he does at his size, he just is voracious, man, on hunting pucks. He doesn't lose puck battles really very often. He's got enough skill to play in your top six if you need him to. He got so much grit, man, and I'm really hoping Columbus makes the playoffs for him. We got a second and a third for him. In the past, I think he would have gone for a first, no question, but everybody on the Canucks is having a down year. Overall, it's been ridiculously hard to create offense for most guys on the team this year, which again, I kind of think goes back to Adam Foote. If you can't get the puck out of your own zone, you're not going to have a lot of time with the puck to do anything with it. Um, so I think for where we're at for the season he's having, he hasn't scored on a goalie since November. That's tough. So getting a second and a third for him, I'm okay with it. I'm happy. You touched on Evander Kane. I just don't think anybody wanted him, to be honest, with the season he's having and the baggage that he comes with. I truly just don't think any team looked at it and said, "Yeah, we're willing to take on 5.5 or even 4 million if the Canucks retained for that guy." Just not really going to help us, which I can understand. And Teddy Bluger not getting moved. I think they're probably going to resign him because the reports coming out before the deadline were if they didn't move him that he wants to stay. He's a good guy. I'll be okay with it. I'm sure he's not going to get a huge raise, and even if he does get a bit of a raise, we're not gonna be very high to the cap ceiling anyway. So I would have liked to have gotten some pieces for him, but what can you do? Overall, I think they did pretty well. A couple smaller moves they made as well, moving Lucas Reichel on for a sixth. That one kind of sucks because we traded a fourth rounder to get him. So if he turns out to be a good player in Boston, that'll stick in my craw for sure. I'm not super stoked about that. And who else did they trade? Oh, David Kampf.
David Kampf to Washington, and then trading just some AHL players. Jet Wu going to San Jose, but obviously Jet Wu's been in Abbotsford all year.
So that one's kind of whatever. Getting anything for David Kampf, pretty happy with it. Again, I'm pretty sure we traded a higher pick than a sixth to acquire David Kampf, so that's kind of a bummer. But like I said earlier in the episode, doesn't make sense to compound mistakes, so whatever, we got something for him. Overall, I'm happy with the deadline and happy that seemingly they are committed to going the direction of a full teardown.
Yeah, I will say the state of hockey in Canada isn't looking great right now because we just talked about the Maple Leafs, Flames, Jets, and Vancouver all rebuilding. Just a couple things I want to touch on with Connor Garland. The first thing I'll say is Connor Garland's the perfect example of why I said you move off of guys quickly, because it's better to have the fear of him absolutely lighten it up with another team than waiting too long and losing that value. The other thing too is when players get traded to other teams, for those hockey fans out there that want to learn something about analytics, maybe you don't gel with the systems on your current team. Maybe you've lost motivation. Maybe you just need a fresh start. So I think oftentimes teams move off of guys and then the player has a lot of success on their new team. They go, oh, why did we trade him? This guy's a goal per game player now. It's like, no, they needed that new environment. They needed some new guys in the locker room to play with. They needed a change of system, change of coaching. So I think it's always better to move guys early. And I think Connor Garland's return is the example of why you don't wait too long because I think they for sure could have got a first for him. I expect his production to ramp up a little bit on Columbus. Columbus is kind of doing what I hoped Washington would do. Columbus, not currently in a playoff spot. They're 1 point out. They're still going for it, trying to acquire assets. I just want to sing the praises of Connor Garland a little bit because I think he may have the best wall work out of any forward in the National Hockey League. That dude is relentless. He plays with so much energy. And maybe it's because he has a low center of gravity, but the way he protects the puck against the wall, he's perfect for a forecheck. I think any team would be lucky to have Connor Garland, despite this being a little bit of a down year. The other thing that probably doesn't help too is that he enters into the new extension of his contract next season, so he still has another 6 years left at 6 million starting next season. Which
That the contract started this year.
I thought the contract started last year. I thought it was
No,
signed
he
this
was,
year for an extension starting next year. Well,
maybe.
either way, he's either got 5 years at 6 million left or 6 years at 6 million left. He's a bit of an older dude. Maybe that lowers his value a little bit, having to pay him $6 million near the end of that contract. If anything, the guy I feel the worst for is Connor Garland in this situation because clearly he wanted to stay in Vancouver. He signed a long-term deal with them. Um, it is next. I think it isn't. It starts next year because he had a no movement clause on that deal.
Yeah, yeah, he does.
So
That's
I
why
think
we had to move him now.
Yeah, so I think it is 6 years starting next year. So clearly he wanted to stay in Vancouver because he negotiated for a new no movement clause. He's going to go to Columbus where they can push for a playoff spot. I don't see Columbus having the pieces to be successful in a playoff run, and then he's going to be stuck in Ohio for 6 years. So feels bad for Connor Garland, but I think all in all, probably should have moved him sooner. But I think the Canucks, they've done well with the opportunities they've had. I think that's what you can say. Like, is it the greatest return for these guys? No, but given the circumstances they're in, they've done the best they can, I think.
Considering the fact that at last year's deadline, they didn't move anybody other than Carson Soucy. Didn't move off UFA Brock Besser, which now it's just like, what the hell, man? That was just stupid. But yeah, we should have started this a year earlier, but what are you gonna do? I'm pretty happy with how it went this deadline. Again, I just don't think we were gonna get anything for Vander Kane. There was no interest there. And Bluger, I'd be expecting an extension to come in the next couple weeks, I'll say, if not days. So
Yeah, I like
overall,
Teddy Bluger.
yeah,
Good. He's good on the penalty kill. Good defensive guy.
he's a good player. He's a good player. I am surprised that teams didn't push a little harder for him. I know everybody on the Canucks, their counting stats don't look great, which they're not going to on a 32nd place team. But I'm a little surprised there wasn't more interest in him, given what he provides in multiple areas of the game. But whatever.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's two other teams I want to get to for sure. Ethan, you can tell me if we're missing anything after. But two other teams going down. One team that I think has done very well is well. We obviously knew they were in win now mode. They made a trade earlier this year that basically announced that they have a 2 year window, and that's the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, adding Quinn Hughes has absolutely revolutionized that decor. They went from 32nd in points among defensemen to first in points among defensemen, uh, all kind of based around the offensive production of one player. Of course, Brodin was out to start the season, so that didn't help. They're going to add two more pieces. They add Nick Foligno for seemingly nothing. They also add Bobby Brink from Philadelphia. And I think what was missing for the Wild was that offensive depth. They obviously have the goaltending. They have Wallstedt and Gustafsson, probably the best goalie pair in the league right now. Defensively, they're looking very solid, as we just mentioned. Quinn Hughes a big part of that. Uh, my only slight issue is neither of these guys are listed as centers. I'm sure they can play center. They're looking a little weak down the middle, especially moving off of Marco Rossi. That's my only concern positionally is Foligno and Brink are both listed as wingers. I haven't watched Chicago or Philadelphia enough. I don't know how many draws they're taking for those guys. But just the fact that you add depth. Foligno's a former captain. Obviously, Marcus is on the team, so it's kind of cool when brothers get to play together. I'm sure that'll be good for morale in the locker room. I hate to say this, but for me, Minnesota might be looking like the most dangerous team in the West right now for me.
Okay, first off, it is cool that the Foligno brothers are going to get to play together. I'm sure they've been hoping to do that at some point for most of their career. So that'll be exciting to watch the fanfare around that. Looking at Bobby Brink, he scored at least 10 goals in each of his three NHL seasons. So as you're saying, it's some welcome depth there on the wing. Had 41 points last year, which so obviously he has some offensive tools. He's offensively inclined. You're talking about the center depth. I think with the moves that Colorado made at this deadline, and I guess you can say Dallas too, but they kind of already had their pieces in place. I am, well, one, I'm hoping Minnesota lose in the first round because that helped out the Canucks. But I think just looking at these rosters, obviously that's why they play the games. You got to see mano a mano who's best. But I think Minnesota's going to lose to Dallas in the first round. I know Quinn Hughes is an absolute weapon, and him and Faber make up a ridiculous tandem. But I do not think they have the offensive forces to compete with the Dallas Stars if they're chugging. I mean, we know what Rantanen does in the playoffs, and that roster is just flush with talent up and down. And I know Tyler Myers is their sixth defenseman, but with the left side that the Dallas Stars employ, Heiskanen, Lindell, and Thomas Harley, I mean I fear for Minnesota that they're going to be losing in the first round again, and it's going to be like, holy shit, we got one more year to maximize Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, and you know what? That's super fair point. I kind of look at this too. With Dallas, obviously Johnson and Robertson are having career years there. I think it's easy to look at Colorado and say, well, look at the moves they made. We still don't know the return for Kadri. I'm pretty sure, so that's one. We don't know what they gave up. And also, Minnesota kind of leveraged a lot of their assets in acquiring the in acquiring Quinn Hughes. So they don't really have a lot of assets left to move off of. The one thing they could have done is moved a goalie, right? Like you don't need both Gustafson and Wallstedt, and there's a lot of talk around moving Wallstedt now because once again his value is high. You want to move guys when their values are the highest. You don't want to wait. They didn't do that. I'm really surprised to see a goalie not moved. I was thinking either him or Bennington for sure were going to get moved today. Maybe a last minute trade can still trickle in, but I don't think it happens. I agree with you. The depth isn't there. I think offensively, their production is going to be top tier. I think goaltending, these guys can steal games. The hardest thing is just don't get injured, right? Like if you make it out of the first round, then you have a chance. The hardest series for Minnesota will be whoever they play in the first round, which is why the playoff format is stupid. But even if you retain Bobby Brink and Nick Foligno next year, once again, the cap's going up. It's a pretty deep free agent class. I think next year could be Minnesota's year. But I also said that this year would be St. Louis's year, and look where they are. So I don't know anything about predicting hockey. Like I said, I just know goaltending, and that's it. Don't look to me for predictions.
Right. Yeah, one smaller trade, I guess, that happened after we started the pod, Calgary and New York swapping prospects. Brennan Othman going to the Flames for Jacob Battaglia. I looked at both their stats, both guys having okay seasons, not particularly great. So maybe just a little change of scenery sparked them a little bit. But Calgary, holy shit, how many moves did they make this deadline?
Calgary did a great job.
Yeah.
Great job. And sorry, the other team I want to actually talk about is St. Louis. And this is why I was surprised they didn't trade Jordan Binnington. We heard all the rumors about Jordan Kyrou to start the season. Robert Thomas's name got floated around a bit. Colton Parayko's name got floated around a bit. Obviously, there's a trade in place to send him to Buffalo. He didn't want to go to Buffalo, no surprise. Who wants to? Which is likely what prompted the acquisition of Logan Stanley. Um, I think Doug Armstrong's doing a really good job here. I think that if you're not winning and you're as bad as the St. Louis Blues are this season, you have to move off of guys. Now, I thought they would be in a much better position than they were. Obviously, were they a wild card team last year? They were a wild card team. Yeah, they played Winnipeg. They were a wild card team last year. Hold up, we're getting some breaking news here. First in 2028, second rounder Victor Olofsson, Matt Caron, retaining 20%. I think that's a good trade. I'd give up a first in 2 years for Nazem Kadri right now if you got a chance to win a cup. What do you
Max,
think about that? We'll get to St. Louis in a second, but what do you think about that?
yeah, pretty electric return for Calgary. Everybody knew they were trying to move him. It was announced that he wanted to be moved. But they basically got two firsts. I mean, not really. I mean, Max Karan was a fifth round pick in the 24 draft, but the last 2 years in the dub, in the dub, he's been heavily over a point a game. So he's looking like a pretty good prospect there. So a first, a second, uh, pretty solid forward prospect.
Yeah, and you seem Olafson's just there to just fill a roster spot. He hasn't really hit his potential since leaving Buffalo. Outstanding job by the Calgary Flames. This is a GM masterclass in Calgary right now. Um, what's interesting is Vancouver and Calgary both seem to kick off a hard rebuild at the same time. So we'll see who hits the ground running first. I'm thinking it's going to be the Calgary Flames, and it could come just in time for a new arena and hosting the World Cup of Hockey. So that will be huge for the hockey culture in the city of Calgary. Masterclass going on in Calgary right now if it all plays out.
In terms of the teams that are known to be rebuilding, I think Calgary won the deadline for sure. Not including contenders who are adding pieces. Teams in terms of the sellers, I think Calgary far and away has done the best job so far. Now that being said, they did have actual assets to move off. They weren't like us, who we have a bunch of players that seemingly not a lot of people wanted. So
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Calgary through and through. My deadline winners. Uh, I'd say probably LA or Connor Garland are my deadline losers.
that's tough.
I still like the job that Minnesota did adding those depth pieces as well, even though those guys aren't clear centers. But St. Louis, just going back to them for a second, they're doing a similar thing because they were in a position where they made the playoffs last year. I think people expected them to at least compete for a playoff spot this year. I assume most people weren't as high on them as I was because I'm an idiot. Um, but at the end of the day, they saw it wasn't working and they go, we're not going to wait. We're going to move everyone we can and we need to start a rebuild. They move off of Justin Falk. That was a really good deal. I believe he got sent to where was it Detroit that got Justin Falk. And then the big one, they move off of Braden Shen to the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders are in it to win it this season. They smell blood in the water. Bo Horvat's looking fantastic still for the Islanders. So I just want to give props to Doug Armstrong for not waiting until these guys value depreciates. He's not playing games. He's not going, well, we'll sit in no man's land. Will we or won't we make the playoffs? Let's see. He's being decisive. That's why I thought they were going to move off of Binnington now. Obviously, his regular season stock's not the highest in the world, but it's a very shallow goalie market, so I still think you could have got a really good return for him. A lot of teams are looking for goaltending. They chose not to do that. Maybe they were shopping him and there was no deal in place. But I just want to give a shout out to Doug Armstrong. Maybe not as impactful returns as Calgary, but very good job for him for not sitting around and waiting and being proactive.
Never hurts when you get a couple of first round picks at the deadline and you're not going to make the playoffs anyways. Yeah, moving off a couple of older veterans who obviously it wasn't working in St. Louis, and I would expect in the summer to see a couple more big names get moved off of that roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Like St. Louis right now, second last in the league. The only team below them is Vancouver. So adding a couple first round picks and they're gonna have a very high chance of getting one of Reed, McKenna, Verhoff, or Stenberg. So St. Louis should be in a really good position to pick either way. It actually kind of amazes me. I'm just looking at the standings. It amazes me that the closest team to Vancouver is St. Louis, and there's still a 12-point difference.
Yeah, we are far and away gonna have the best draft lottery odds, which actually I don't like because we're not getting the first overall pick. Let's be honest. It's we've never had it before. The team with the best odds typically doesn't get it. We saw last year the New York Islanders jumped 10 spots to get the number one pick. So I'm kind of telling myself we're gonna be picking in that 3 to 5 range, just so when it happens, I'm not too bummed about it.
Yeah,
And if it does happen,
there's four teams right now within 1 point of each other that are the next closest to Vancouver. That's St. Louis, Calgary, Chicago and the Rangers. And boy, oh boy, if Chicago gets it. Chicago's right there.
I'll cry.
They could get it again.
I'll cry. If
Imagine
I was
Bedard
actually
at center, Stenberg on the wing.
I was posing this question the other day to some buddies. If Vancouver doesn't get one of the top two picks, because if you're one or two, you're going to take McKenna or Stenberg, whichever one is available.
Correct.
If we don't get one of those two picks, I actually think we should trade down a few spots. Because we don't. Is Veerhoff going to be great? By all means, yes. But our defensive prospects are the strength of our prospect pool right now. That's not saying a whole lot, but
Do you
that
not
is the
just take
strength.
Chase Reed then?
I mean, you could, but this is the thing. If there's a team that you know is desperate to get Veerhoff because they need defensive help,
Winnipeg.
exactly. Why not move down a spot or two, accumulate even more assets, and get the guy you were going to take anyways? So it's all hypothetical, but I think that could be in play if we don't get one of those top two picks.
Yeah, that's fair. That's not a bad idea. And that's the other thing. It's like St. Louis obviously could use a young defenseman right now. They're likely to move off of Parayko as well. Um, Chicago just
If they
moved
can.
if they can. Chicago just moved arguably their top veteran defenseman, so they could use a defenseman as well. Their decor's a little bit younger though, but it'd just be nice to bolster that. So obviously, if you're Chicago, you're taking McKenna or Stenberg as well. But if not, they could look at a defenseman. The Rangers are in no man's land. I think the Rangers probably have the worst future in hockey right now in the NHL. I feel bad for them. Not really, actually, I don't feel bad for them. Um, they're a complete mess. I don't know what's going on in New York. They're terrible.
Them and
They're
LA
kind of
are
they're
kind of like parallel teams right now. It's like looking in a mirror.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that they're the LA of the East. I think the only difference is that the Rangers are carrying much heavier contracts. The funny thing about that is they moved off of Panarin to LA, so that's something to think about as well that we didn't mention with LA. If you don't think you're winning the playoffs and you're going to be getting rid of guys like Fogle and Perry, why on earth are you picking up Artemi Panarin? Um, those two teams are in a league of their own, uh, in not a good way.
Yeah, mismanagement at its finest.
That's all I really got. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm good.
Big shout out to our insiders, Elliot Friedman, Gage Gammon. Big shout out to Ethan Jorson to bringing us breaking news live. And thank you to all the wonderful teams that made all these trades to give us something to talk about.
Hell yeah, good
Thank
episode.
you for watching and listening, by the way, to the
Like and
fans.
subscribe. Like and subscribe.